Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, it's America vying for our attention on the crazy train again, as Joe Biden, as I think has been expected for like a week or so at least, announced that he would not, after all, be standing in the presidential election this autumn. So Biden won't be taking a fall this fall. But does that necessarily mean that the orange one will? Because the way this is playing out, I've got a couple of concerns. I think one bigger than the other. But I also think the Democrats have got two or three big advantages now. In fact, although I don't think the timing is particularly suspicious, I think it just happened naturally. But you could look at this as actually Biden's played Trump here. But concerns first of all. So the reason Biden will have stepped down is because the election was no longer simply at risk, but strategists will have said that Trump was all but certain to win. Impossible for the Democrats to campaign. Doesn't matter what they try to talk about, whether it be their record or their policies for the future, such as Roe v. Wade. All the news was about, is he too old? Oh, he's getting names wrong. When's he going to stand down? The media utterly killed any attempts the Democrats could have of running a campaign. Doesn't matter whether you think that's fair or not. That's a fact. That's how it works. Now, in any election, that should be reason to change candidate. Do not go into an election where you are 99% certain to lose if there is something relatively straightforward you can do to swing the odds back in your favour. You have to be very, very ruthless in an election. Like in this country, Labour, made the same mistake in 2019. The UK is now on fire. However, this election in the US is way more impactful. It's going to be more impactful in its own country. It's going to be more impactful around the world. You've got committed Republicans arguing against people voting for Trump. You actually have elder statesmen of the Republican Party saying, they're effectively saying, can you vote Democrat, please? This is madness. Anyone who understands what's happening in America knows their country is facing an existential threat. And for the rest of us, the history of the world is at a bit of a junction as well. The US president always has a profound impact on geopolitics, of course. This time the difference could be huge, a real tipping point. So it's kind of important to us as well. So this move swings the odds back towards the Democrats. Does it swing it far enough? Well, my two concerns, first of all. The first is that Biden actually has a very strong record and a very strong platform, and whoever takes over will not have that in their back pocket. Now, this is perhaps why the momentum is really behind Kamala Harris, because as vice president, she can claim to have been part of that project. Indeed, in his letter, Biden gave Harris a lot of the credit and will no doubt do again in his address later this week as he tries to transfer his work to her, which brings me on to my second and serious concern. There's only a few months left to go. And until the Democrats get behind a new candidate, and until they tell the public what they're and who they're voting for, there is a danger the campaign stalls. So it's like, time is of the essence. This needs to be done properly but quickly. Biden and a host of others have swung behind Harris. In other words, she is the path of least resistance to getting the campaign back on track. Is she their best candidate? Because my perception in 2020 was the way I thought it was going to pan out. Ironically, it's going to pan out as I thought in 2020, but for very different reasons. I thought to myself, the Democrats have run out of star players here, right? They haven't. That's why they've had to put up Joe Biden. And don't get me wrong, he's massively impressed me. But I had the impression, look, Biden was always intended as a one-term president, would be mad to try and run for 2 terms at his age. And Harris was picked to run with him in order to raise her profile, groom her for presidency, right? But she wasn't able to do it. She may well have a number of very impressive qualities, but political fire and charisma is not one of them. But it's not like the Democrats have seen other rising stars capture the public imagination either. So from my perspective, the party looks much as it did then. Their major players are old white farts. And I don't think that's just my perception, because when talks started to intensify about Biden needing to step down, because it's been obvious he's needed to for a while now, people were like talking about, Michelle Obama, not even a politician really, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Gavin Newsom. A few said Kamala Harris as well, but it was so spread out and so far out in terms of the people, that they were talking about. It's like if Harris had been able to grow as a political force, there wouldn't have been any question about it. Everyone would have just gone, Harris should just take over the ticket. They wouldn't be discussing a range of other names. some of which were not at all realistic. My worry is that the Democrats have just shifted the odds from impossible to possible to do what's administratively easier for them, without asking who the best candidate would be. Now, I don't know it isn't Harris, by the way. Like I said, the Democrats don't have star players. They failed to develop them. It may well be that they have to realistically back Harris, but she is a risk. I saw someone say, all she needs to do is win back those voters that Biden lost. That's not quite true. She also has to retain the voters that Biden kept. What the Democrats should have been doing, and I hope they have been doing, is identifying the key swing voters, surveying them, find out who they would accept as an alternative to Biden. You won't see this in published polling. We'll never have access to it. It's not worth anyone's money to pay for something like this to be put out in public. It is very valuable information to the Democrats. They could do that. They should have done that. Because the result for my money is quite binary. It's like, yes, there'll be other elections going on. And if Trump does retake the White House, making sure he doesn't have control of Capitol Hill makes a difference. But the damage Trump can do even as president, even with stymied legislative power, is immense. So I still regard the result as largely binary. Either Trump wins or he loses. The fate of quite a lot depends on it. However, those concerns aside, there are two major advantages, potentially a few advantages here, but the two major advantages for the Democrats. And I mean advantages. I don't just mean the removal of a disadvantage. I'm not saying, oh, the absence of Biden put someone else in place as an advantage. No. The first is the Republicans seem to have had just a single attack line against Biden. Oh, he's old, he mixes names up. Well, guess what? This will no longer be the case, but that's not an advantage. Whoever the Dems pick, be it Harris or someone else, they'll not be young as such. I mean, Harris is like nearly 60, but way younger than the orange one and way fitter emotionally, intellectually and physically. But here's where the advantage is. Donald Trump is now the doddering old fool. He always was, of course. Trump may be a bit younger than Biden, but he would have been older than Biden is now at the end of his second term. So complaints about age were hypocrisy. Trump is now the oldest presidential candidate in American history, I believe. The attack line is now directed at him. Trump also gets names confused, and way more confused than that. In fact, his mental and physical fitness is clearly worse than Biden's. But the new Democrat candidate will not have any weaknesses in this area. So bias reporting will get no handle here. The Democrats can literally turn the Republicans' only real attack line against them. Harris may not have impressed as a politician, but she would destroy Trump in the second presidential debate. I wonder if he'll turn up. The Dems can now run on a line of, oh, you don't think the president should be old. Oh, and you don't think they should mix things up. Oh, I guess you won't be voting for Trump then. Second benefit here, and why I think the timing's really helpful to the Democrats, even though you could argue if they'd have done this a month ago, wouldn't that have been better? Ironically, maybe not. And it's that Trump has made his running mate pick, and it's absolutely crazy. Normally, you pick someone who can appeal to a target group of voters that your presidential candidate can't, or would at least struggle to. So Trump picked Pence last time because he's like the respectable evangelical type. But then Trump tried to have him murdered, so he needed someone else, right? Might have gone with someone else regardless anyway, because I think the orange one seems to have won over that group since anyway. But it's not really clear which voters Vance brings to the table. It's said that Trump picked him deliberately because he was insane enough to do whatever the orange one wanted. In other words, the pick was strategically for power, for someone who was attuned with him for what he wanted to do in power, not strategically for the election, because they thought they had the election in the bag and they could now look to what they were going to do in power. The Republicans have now committed themselves to running on a ticket of double crazy that amplifies Trump, not complements him. And that will help the Democrats because they haven't now picked anyone for either position. Completely open. Not completely open. Harris has to be on the ticket somewhere in order to carry on using the donations already gathered, is how I understand it. But if she's backed, so in other words, if they go for a different candidate, she'd have to agree to be the running mate still. But if she's backed as the replacement for Biden, as seems likely, the momentum is right behind her, then they can pick a running mate who covers her blind spots. And by the time this is all sorted, we'll be even closer to the election itself, with less time for the Republicans to adapt, because they've decided to use as their main attack lines personal attacks. They don't really know who to attack. They don't know to attack Harris. They know she's going to be there somewhere. But they can't be absolutely sure here. There's the potential for it to be a little bit like, I think in some ways, the 2008 London mayoral contest. Boris Johnson ended up winning, but his campaign to begin with was failing. The Labour incumbent, Ken Livingstone, was on course to win. Then Johnson got in a new strategist, changed his campaign. Livingstone failed to adapt. Boris Johnson won. There's that potential here. Remember, these key swing voters that I talk about, who are so vital in a first past the post electoral system, they're not really paying close attention right now. Changing candidates this late, obviously that's attracting attention. They're aware of that from the news. It's big news, right? But it hasn't derailed anything as far as those voters are concerned. They're going to start paying attention to what they think after summer, when it's closer there. These are people who, like, particularly when you've got very toxic politics, they don't like it. It's not nice. They're not paying attention to politics. What they're seeing now is Biden putting his country ahead of himself and the Republicans putting Trump's ego above everything. But they'll pay close attention when you get closer to the election. And if the Democrats, they've got the chance to not just change candidate, they can even change some of their approach if some of the approaches haven't been working. And the Republicans, if they struggle to adapt, it's game on. I would just be more comfortable if the Democrats had actually thought about their future in advance, put effort into developing rising stars, and when they fail to inspire, switch to other potentials. You've got to be brutal in politics, because if you're not, your opponents will be. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.